Hi guys, I'm Saintvicious, and this is going to be my patch 9.15 TFT rundown. Okay, so let's get this started. So the win and loss streak has been buffed a little bit to where the second part of the streak, the +2 gold, actually kicks in a little bit sooner. I think this is a really good change. One of my favorite parts about playing auto chess and DAC was that you could manage loss sprees if you had a bad roll at the beginning of the game and use that to like catch up later in the game. It was more of like an econ management system with kind of gauging how strong you are in the game. And I think that due to the pacing and how poor the win loss streak system was in TFT, I don't think that was something that you could do. So I think this is a very good change, and I think it'll add a lot more expression of skill and things like that to the game. So I think that's a really fun thing overall. The class breakpoints, they kind of buffed them. This is kind of like not buffed, but they tweaked them for the future. So these changes don't really matter. These are just like kind of being like, all right, in the future when we do add these units, then like we can actually do some cool stuff with this. Player damage, they lowered the player damage overall. Like I know a lot of people complained about the games being too fast. I know like I almost never see level 9. And I don't think I've ever seen Baron Nashor in a game ever. I don't even is it Baron Nashor even in the game? Or like I don't even know what comes after the scuttler, and I almost never see the scuttler either. So a lot of like the mid game comps are like a little too powerful because of the amount of player damage people take, and you don't really get to see those like cool late game events. And then on top of that, like the player damage being too high made it to where like these loss streaks that we talked about is not really something that you could manage. So I really do like that they did this change as well. It's gonna add a little bit more depth to the game and a little bit more skill expression. I think it's going to be pretty great overall. They lowered the available units in the carousel. Not really sure the point of that. Don't think it's going to have like too much impact. But yeah, I don't think it'll be too much of a difference. Assassins. So they nerfed assassins last batch. I haven't really seen anybody using them. Part of the reason for that is because of like how popular demons are. Morgana, Cannon, all those Aatrox, all those units just destroy demons. All those units destroy assassins. So assassins were like kind of unplayable on top of the nerf just because of the meta as well. So what they're doing is they're actually buffing a lot of these assassin champions. So Evelyn, they buffed her 80 by 10. They nerfed her ability damage a little bit in the level 2 and the level 1. Or actually, no, they buffed her ability damage. I lied. Yes, they buffed her ability damage and buffed her 80. So Evelyn's going to be a little bit stronger. Not really that much of a change. So I see people play Evelyn even out of assassins. They play her in like demon comps. I'm not sure how popular demon comps are going to be in this patch, but we'll see. Katarina, they buffed her ultimate to be. Actually, wait, they nerfed her. No, they buffed her ultimate. Yeah, it's 4, 5. Yeah, it's 4, 5, 6. So 4, 6, 8. So there's one more dagger. I don't really think the damage on Katarina's ult was ever the problem with the ultimate. I think the problem with Katarina is that at level 1 she has 450 health, and it takes her an eternity to get that ultimate off. So it's really just like you need mana items on her to even do her thing. So I think that maybe if they tweak the mana a little bit and adjusted some health, that would be some better changes for her. Rhaegar, they changed the attack damage. They buffed it by 5. Decent buff, because you got to remember they buffed Rhaegar's attack damage on the previous patch as well. So he's starting to get borderline, like pretty broken 80 amounts. So I'm going to keep an eye on Rhaegar. Maybe some assassin builds with Rhaegar could be really popular. One build I used to run is I would go like 6 assassins, and then I would run like a Gnar as my 7th unit. And then that would give me wild buff, and I would just like let the Rhaegar carry, and I'd put like rapid fire and BT on him, and I thought it was a really fun build. They also buffed his attack speed too, and they also buffed the attack speed buff on when it ults, like how much attack speed it gives. So I think Rhaegar's definitely something to keep an eye out on. And some of these 6 assassin builds might actually be pretty cool, and I'm gonna experiment with them on the new patch and let you guys know how it goes. Demons, everybody knows demons are just disgusting broken on this on the current patch. And they basically make like half the classes unplayable just because of how oppressive they are with their mana burn. So they toned down the mana burn on the 2 and the 4 demons. I think the 4 demon was the biggest culprit and why demons were so ridiculously annoying. And then on the 6 demons, it's still 60%. But I don't really think anybody's going to be going 6 demons anymore. So I definitely think that this mana burn change was needed. And I think demon mana burn will still be relevant, but it won't be like, damn, every other auto is just mana burning me for all my mana. So it's just really ridiculous. So I'm really glad they did this change. And on top of that, they also nerfed Varys, Aatrox, and Morgana. Varus was a disgusting 2-cost unit, probably the best 2-cost unit in the game, because if you get Sorcerer buff, that 600 damage ultimate was doing 1,000 AoE damage, and it was actually being cast like 2 to 3 times per fight. So with this change, they toned it down by like 50 damage on the rank 2 and then 100 damage on the rank 1. I think that Varus is still really good, but it'll tone down some like that oppressive nature to his ability. And Aatrox's ability damage, everybody knows like level 1 Aatrox should not be one-shotting like half your team. So they really lowered the damage on that ultimate by a lot. It went from 400 to 250, and then the tier 2 ultimate does 100 less damage. 100 less damage didn't really sound that much, but most people ran sorcerers with Aatrox or any demons, so that damage is actually going to be cut down significantly. Aatrox's health also got lowered by 50, so that's a pretty good nerf as well. And then Morgana ability damage got nerfed by 150 as well. So, or 100 on the first ability and 50 on the second ability. So she pretty much got the same treatment as Aatrox. So this combination of the mana burn nerf and all these other nerfs to demons, I think that demons are still playable. The build will probably still be strong, but it will be nowhere near like what it is on current live patch. So I think that I think that demons will kind of be how like Volibear and Brawlers are on the current live patch, where it's like you can play them if no one else is going them, and you high roll them. That's like pretty much my general consensus on demons. Dragons are actually seeing a big rise in popularity in like Grandmaster games that I've played in. Just because of how popular demons and things like that and sorcerers are. There's a lot of magic damage going around, so they actually have nerfed that magic damage a little bit to where I guess like Vigar and like some other strong units can actually kill these dragons, which I think is a pretty good change, because being just 100% immune to magic and just like cucking an entire team comp, it seemed a little ridiculous. So to compensate for that, they buffed the armor on Shyvana by 10, and they raised the ASL health by 50, and then they also raised the damage by 50 on the rank 2. I think that these changes are like pretty reasonable, and I think that dragons will still be kind of where they're at right now, just as strong. So I still like dragons. I was running them with like a demon shapeshifter build. I'm not sure how I'm going to run them now because the demon nerfs. Probably might go back to wild. We'll see. I have to mess around with the builds a little bit. We'll see what we like. Elementalists, Golem's really good. Elementalist, even on live patch, still really strong. But some of the units are just kind of dog shit. Like Lysandra is like, it's like you don't even have a unit on the board. She's so worthless. So they buffed her level 2 ultimate by 75, which is, it's whatever, but it's something. It's something, she's in the game now. She's doing that 75 damage. Brand ability damage, they also buffed that by 50, and then 25 on the first rank. Brand, I think one of his problems is that they nerfed his mana so hard, so that in one of the patches a while ago, so it can actually be really hard for him to get his ultimate off sometimes, especially if he's level 1. So I think that this damage buff is pretty nice overall. It's definitely going to raise his damage bar up a lot, because Brand's ability bounces, so it's like 50 times like however many bounces, so that's actually like a considerable damage buff to Brand. But it's still kind of hard to get his ability off if you don't put any mana items or anything like that on him. So that's something just to keep in mind. But I still think Elementalists are very strong, by the way. One of the strongest origins in the game, as a matter of fact. Guardians, I've seen a decent rise in popularity in Guardians. I've seen a lot more people running them. I know it's extremely popular in the EU high elo meta. A little bit less so in the NA meta. But yeah, so they buffed Guardians armor stack to be 50 instead of 40, but Guardians don't buff themselves, and to compensate for that, they made where Braum, will have 50 armor naturally more, and Leona 45 armor naturally more. And the main reason for that is, you can see like up here in the text, is just like, let's say you would just have a single Braum or a single Leona without the buff. I think that they're like better standalone individual units. So it's a pretty decent change. I think it's pretty good. You'll probably see Guardians a little bit more in the new patch. I think that especially with like some of the Ranger builds we're seeing, and then maybe even some of the Knight builds we're seeing, I think you'll definitely see a rise in Guardians. So expect to see them popping up a little bit more. Knights are just absolutely worthless on live patch. You see nobody running them outside. Like maybe you run like, Darius and Garen as your opener, and then like the moment you get like a level 1 Aatrox or some shit, you sell that. So pretty worthless. They buffed them in an interesting way in this new patch. So before, how the Knight bonus worked is it would just block, basic attack damage, and it would only block the basic attack damage on your Knights. So what that means is that it was worthless versus magic damage and periodic damage, and also worthless to your teammates. Like if an assassin jumps on your backline, that Garen ain't doing shit. So now what it does, your team ignores 15, 30, and 55 damage from all sources. I'm pretty sure that means periodic damage as well. So that means like Morello tick, Kennen ultimate ticks, like things like that. So it may not sound like 30 and 55 is very much, but with the way that damage comes out and the fact that it's going to be applied to everybody, like imagine a Draven with 55 damage reduction who also has like a BT and magic resist from that and also has like a PD. Like that's a really, really tanky Draven, right? So I think that this change overall is going to be very interesting, and it's also going to be very interesting with the rise in popularity of things like Rangers in the current patch and like people using Shiv and things like those for their damage sources, which, Shiv only does 100 damage on live. It does 90 on this patch. We'll talk about that later. So it's just a lot of the ways that people are dealing damage on current live patch is going to be impacted a lot by these Knight changes. And then on top of that, they also buffed Darius' armor to 40, which is they almost doubled his armor. That's pretty insane. And then Garen now has 5 more armor as well. He has 40. Mordekaiser got his armor buffed by 5 as well. Sejuani by 5. Sejuani had her ultimate nerfed a little while ago, and they're kind of reverting those changes. Now it's 4-second ultimate. Kale has 50 less health, but has 5 more armor. So I think that you're going to see probably a lot of Knight builds that are focused around Thornmail and things like that. Maybe Ionic Spark. I think there's going to be a lot of like really cool Knight builds that you're going to see running around, and Knights actually might be one of the best origins in the game with these changes, but I need to see some of the builds that people came up with. One of the builds I was doing on PB was I ran a 6 Knight comp, and then I would just use Draven as my main damage source, and then you can run whatever else. Maybe you can like somehow get like your 4 Imperials or like some Blade Masters or something. You can like get whatever you want into that composition through spatulas and things like that. So I think be on the lookout for Knights. They seem really cool. Okay, so Ninjas got hit in. I mean, they got buffed pretty heavily, I think, on this patch to kind of counteract some of the assassin nerfs. These are very interesting buffs because now the Ninja buff gives AP as well as AD. So what does that mean? That means it's a huge buff for units like Kennen and Akali. That have like really big ability damage. So I think that this change, like maybe you'll see like Kennen, and some sorcerer comps a little bit more, like you already see now. And then also like maybe you see Akali and like some type of sorcerer comps. They also buff Shen's attack speed by a little bit, Zed's attack speed by a little bit, Zed's attack damage, and in order to compensate for these like big changes to the AP amount that you get on your Ninja buff, like they're toning down Kennen and Akali's base damage. But I think I saw somebody post and they did the math on it that even with these base damage nerfs, the Ninja buff overall will give it considerably more damage than it does now. So I think that these are like pretty interesting Ninja changes. And I think that like, let's say you have a comp like the Soulless Demon comp where you have Kennen in there as like one of your primary damage dealers. I think, and he's like the only ninja. I think that like you'll be seeing like that's where like the buff and things are going to kick in, or like putting Akali in a sorcerer comp with something like this. So very interesting Ninja changes. I think that people come out with a lot of like really wacky builds with this, and I think it'll be pretty cool. Nobles were absolutely worthless on live patch because of the prevalence of magic damage from demons and whatnot. So they're pretty much unplayable. Even if you hit all the nobles, you still just lost to magic damage. So I'm glad that they actually put magic resist on the ultimate now. And they also, you do plus 35 life on hit. So I think that if you have the noble buff, you'll be extremely sturdy against all damage sources. And then they also tweaked some of the values on the noble units themselves. So Vayne, they lowered her attack damage to 40. So that's like nothing, like non-existent damage. But they buffed her attack speed to 0.75. So what does that mean? That means that you can put like a Rage Blade on Vayne now, and you can try to like basically use her W or her ultimate or whatever to be the primary damage source in this like for her. So I think that Vayne will be a little bit better, but maybe, you know, she's still a level 1 unit, so, you know, you're going to get what you expect out of it. Garen, they buffed his attack damage by 5 to go on top of the armor that they buffed earlier, and they also buffed his attack speed, so he's going to be decently strong. And then Garen's ability damage is also going to be doing a little over 100 more on the rank 1, so... and also they buffed his... or wait, hold on. 450 to 360, and then 580. Oh, actually, no. The ultimate level 1 does less damage, but does more damage later. My bad. I misread that. And then now Garen also moves while he's spinning, so he's not like Gimp as he is in the live patch. So pretty big buffs to Garen overall. I think that these noble changes are very interesting. And due to the way of how the game is going to be slower and with the player damage, I think you're going to see a decent amount of noble comps popping up. And that's going to be something people are going for. And I want to see, it's going to be interesting how people play to counteract this comp as well. So I'm very excited to see these noble changes. I think it's going to be pretty fun and healthy for the game. Pirate, they tweaked the gold a little bit. You remember they nerfed the average gold per chest last patch. I think this is kind of like bringing that number back up a little bit more, back more in line. And then they also raised Gray's attack speed, and they buffed TF a little bit. Twisted Fate was probably the worst unit in the entire game last patch. I'm not sure these changes are really going to do that much for him, but we'll see. I mean, it's a decent damage buff. It's a 100 damage buff on rank 2, and the improved cast speed could be interesting, but I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I also don't foresee pirates or gunslingers being that popular on this current this new patch because of, you know, the guardians and the knights being so prevalent and strong, and also rangers being so strong. So it'll be interesting to see where gunslingers go from here. Void is probably the worst origin in the game on the live patch. Now they've tweaked it in a very interesting way to where now all the Void units do true damage. So what does that mean? That means like Chogath, if he ultimates your whole team and you have a little bit of AP, he'll probably one-shot your whole team. So it's kind of interesting. And they raised Kassadin's attack damage by 10, and they lowered his attack speed a little bit. Kha'Zix's ability, the isolation, non-isolated damage has been raised by 50. They also raised his attack damage, and Rek'Sai, you know, one of the worst units in the game as well. They raised her attack damage by 10, and her ability damage by 100, which is actually quite a big buff. And they raised the heal by, or actually no, they lowered the heal by 100. And then Chogath, they raised his attack speed a little bit, and then they buffed the damage of the ult by 100 on rank 2. And then they made the knockup a little bit shorter. So I'm kind of interested in some of these builds people do. One of the builds that I think that will probably be popular is a brawler build with just put Kha'Zix or Kassadin. They're probably Kassadin. And then, you know, you just put like some AP items on Chogath or something. Just something strange like that. Or you can run like brawler sorcerers. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like weird little compositions people make. And I'm actually like pretty excited to see it. I saw when I was playing on PB, people were making like death cap Chogath and, you know, and like making Sork builds and doing ridiculous stuff like that. And just legit, they were legit like one-shotting my entire team. So it'd be pretty interesting to see how these changes pan out. Yordles are very weird, and I think very strange how they can be adjusted. I think the Yordle synergy overall in this game is a poorly designed mechanic. So we can compare the dodge mechanic in auto chess to this dodge mechanic in this game. Dodge mechanic in auto chess with elves, if you dodged an ability, you did not generate that person did not generate mana. So the Yordles or the elves are actually pretty good against mages also, on top of like the auto attackers, because, you know, it'd be difficult for the mage to generate the mana to even like cast the ability to kill the elf in the first place. However, in the way that they're going about designing it in this game is they're just over bloating the raw stat of dodge to go kind of like overcompensate. They're like overcompensating with the raw stats, which I think is just poor. That's poor game design in general. So now the 3 Yordles does 30% dodge, and 6 Yordles does 55% dodge, and also dodges on hit effects. So that's like red buff, shiv, things like that. Lulu, they lowered her armor by 5, doesn't really make a difference. Buffed Viger's HP by 50, doesn't make a difference really. And they buffed Nar's 80 by 5. So Yordles are still really weird. I'm not sure how I feel about them. Maybe with demons being nerfed and seeing less demons, maybe you will see a little bit more Yordles running around. You know, with how popular like knights and rangers and things like that are going to be. So it'll be interesting to see what people do with Yordles. So we'll see about that. Then they also tweaked some other champions of the game. They changed Blitz's mana to 125 instead of 150, so he can actually get that second hook off, especially if you put like a Sojin on him, but I don't know why you'd waste that item on him. Ashe's 80 got buffed by 5. Kindred's 80 got buffed by 5 as well. Morgana's ability cast time got raised to 0.5. Doesn't really make a big difference. Yasuo got 10 more AD. Kind of interesting because I already think Yasuo is insanely powerful. And then Karthus got a pretty big buff. The number of targets that his ult hits got raised by 1 on earlier levels and 2 on others. So pretty much if you have rank 2 Karthus, it'll hit everybody. And then the damage also got buffed by 50 and then 100, which is kind of interesting because I think Karthus is also still an extremely powerful unit as well. So definitely think that Karthus is going to be something to keep an eye out on. Probably going to do an insane amount of damage. Items, they changed Locket to be a 250 shield that lasts 4 seconds. I already don't like using Locket or Zeke's or any aura item just because of the way it makes you position, so I'll probably never use Locket again. Anic Spark got nerfed by 50 damage, which it should have been because Spark on Live is just disgusting early game, or pretty much at any point of the game. I'm not sure if I'll use Spark. I'll probably use Spark in my Knight build still since the fights are going to be so long. But I think maybe in Brawler builds as well, but I don't think I'll use it in any other build. Just because of this. I mean, this is pretty big damage nerf overall, so. Hush Silence duration got changed from 5 to 3. That's, I mean, 5 second with a 50. Just to put it in perspective, Hush has a 50% proc rate, and it lasts 5 seconds. So that was kind of crazy, right? So it's even 3 seconds with 50% proc rate is pretty insane. So it's kind of a much deserved nerf. So Static Shiv, they lowered the damage by 10. That's not really that big of a deal. I think Static Shiv is still like the best early game item in the game. Still a super good item. Still like one of my top picks for items. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the patch notes. I think my big things to look out for are these like ninja changes are interesting. The night changes are like the MVP of the patch, but definitely something I'm going to be messing around with. And then also like, you know, with the little ranger buffs and like how popular rangers are becoming. Keep an eye out for rangers. And also some more late game compositions with like the tweaks to the player damage. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the patch note rundown, and I'll see you guys next time.